Welcome to the Franchise Frontier, the podcast where we explore the evolving franchise landscape, dive into latest industry trends, and share actionable tools and tactics to help you build and grow your business.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Franchise Frontier podcast, where we explore evolving franchise landscape, dive into industry trends, and give actionable tools and tactics for your business. I'm Dave Kimura, the host, and today we have a special guest, Brad Saunders. He is the brand president from Heroes Lawn Care. Welcome, Brad.
Hi, Dave. Good to be here.
Brad, as you are new to horsepower in a little bit of a context, talk to us a little bit about your background in franchising and what brought you to horsepower.
It's a long story, but I'll abbreviate a little bit. It was about 1991. I finally determined that I probably didn't want to work for somebody. I wanted to work for myself. As you probably know, getting into business ownership isn't the easiest thing. So I chose the franchise route. So I actually became a franchisee for a regional brand up in the Wisconsin market, and had great success to the point where I was able to actually sell that business. Once I sold it, I became an independent operator. I worked my own brands, bought and sold some businesses, but I always had that interest in franchising. About 2016, I actually went back into franchising on the franchisor side, working for a lawn care company. And it was a great experience and led me to some other opportunities, but it was a contract deal, and I ended my consulting work with them and was an independent business consultant for many years, helping small businesses, including landscaping. And then Horsepower called me, and I was like, yeah, this is a good fit. So I like being in a position of franchisor with a brand like Horsepower Brands, and the Heroes Lawn Care is probably one of the most interesting brands to me, for sure.
In our portfolio, we have 9 brands, and I know Heroes was one of the first brands that we came about. And so, for everybody that doesn't know a lot about the green industry, we'll call it, when you talk about the franchise landscape and the industry landscape of lawn care, just talk a little bit about what that entails. Obviously, there's some people like ourselves that don't necessarily have the lawn cutting as part of the package to start. There are people that cut grass. I'm sure there's a vast difference in that. So just speak to the industry a little bit, and then what aspects of that Heroes provides.
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is a vast industry. And I like the industry and the fact that it's one of those things we know we have to do. If you own a home, you got to maintain the property, right? Many of us start off, including myself, doing it ourselves, but eventually get to a point in life where having somebody else professionally do it makes a lot of sense. You touched on it a little bit, but the amount of service lines that we have is significantly more than any of our other brands in any industry. So we can do anywhere from snow plowing to fertilizing your grass ultimately, and that's all in that property care idea. The term green industry is a good indicator because, again, we're working with plants. We're working with live, living environments. Now, we still do hardscape. We still can help with finishing non-planted areas, but the industry primarily is focused on plant health, tree health, beautification, and obviously value improvement for property.
And so with that being said, of the service lines provided by Heroes, I know you touched on a few of them. Irrigation is also involved in that, as well as, I think, mosquito, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Again, many different service lines. To help you understand that better, we've talked with our newsies more about what I've called the triangle of lawn care, right? If I meet you and go to your home, I'll talk about 3 different things. You got to make sure we give it the right nutrition, that grass to turn green. We got to water when it needs water, not all the time. And we got to make sure we cut it right. Most of our current Zs do not cut grass. That tends to be the low margin service. The ones that do are using that as a lead development source. They're servicing a customer on a full-time basis. So they'll do cutting with something else, fertilization typically. Most people that want a really good looking lawn want irrigation, especially in markets like this. It's 100 degrees. Sometimes you do have to take care of the lawn blades properly, meaning it can't be overwatered and can't be underwatered. It has to be the right amount at the right time. When it comes to things like mosquito and bug control, we have insects in our lawn, believe it or not. And if they get out of hand, it'll cause lawns to turn brown, die off. People think that's a watering problem. It may not be. It may actually be a bug problem. Mosquitoes are just pests. What we do is pesticides. We have pesticides for pests like mosquitoes. And again, it all goes back to, am I able to help you enjoy your backyard, enjoy your property? So our service lines are very vast. Further than that, other things that we can do in your yard, I talked a little bit about tree and shrub bedding. All those things can be cared for properly and thrive based on professional help.
That seems like that would be a great, while you don't necessarily have to have all of those service lines in play right away, it seems like that would be a great indicator for a business that could be fast growing, as to start out maybe with the triangle and then grow into a mosquito as you generated more business. I think that that's a way to basically have an empire builder, but not so much as an entry level of cost.
Yeah, one of our advantages in our brand is that we're on your lawn a lot. I mean, could be all year long. In our Florida areas, that we're actually servicing lawns all year long. Every single month we have revenue coming out of there. The northern guys have added snow plowing. The snow removal and ice maintenance is a service line that we do in the northern tiers. But the idea is that we can be there more often. We get a better relationship with the customers. So when it comes to add-on services, much easier sell. You typically, a first customer, and especially in your beginning years of owning this business, go to your customers and say very specifically that we need to get this triangle of lawn care figured out for you. Once we get that, then I'll help you grow the beauty to this property.
As you grow the lawn care business, when you're able to provide a vast number of services, does that help the transition, do you feel, into the commercial space where you can have a one-stop shop to do all those things for a commercial property possibly?
Absolutely. I think the business goal would be to emulate, similar to what our founder has done here in the Omaha market, is to start servicing the residential, especially with those low cost services like cutting, for example. But eventually that cutting for our founder has turned into commercial cutting, where it's bigger, it's more valuable. You can get a better price. You got better price control in it. There's definitely a ability to make that transition into commercial. That's the other thing nice about this line, home service lines. Yeah, we do home service and that's our focus, but we know that there's business owners that we service and they have businesses that need the same care. I think of an example of an obstetrician that actually has a building he owns for his business and a home in the same market. I'd rather call on him than call on the guy that maybe doesn't have a business.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, I've been a part of it in terms of being at Horsepower. I do think the branding is spot on. I think the branding is incredible. I like how we have the marketing built out. It lends itself to that lawn care, maybe even a veteran type model with the hero. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
When you talk about franchisee support, those type of things, obviously I know that in every service line you're going to have to lean on some vendors, some manufacturers or whatnot, suppliers. So can just talk a little bit about some of those relationships that you've either cultivated or massaged since you've been here, and how those are helping our franchisees.
Yeah, for sure. The vendor relationships are critical. With this brand, we use regulated and controlled chemicals, and we use a lot of non-regulated chemicals too. And those nutrients are important, and they're put into a package so it's easy to disperse and it's super safe that way for us and the homeowners. But without Site One, which is our biggest vendor, our biggest national vendor, without Site One, we would lose our agronomy support. We would lose program support. Site One is using their people to help us build programs based on the location. That's another unique part about this, Dave, is that what I do in Florida is completely different than what I do in Texas, right? Different grass, for that matter, different climate, different growing seasons. We need the support of a vendor like Site One in order to help us build programs with products that are not only efficient at what they do, but cost efficient. They help us understand our cost points because of that. The other thing we get from Site One specifically, our biggest vendor, is we immediately start with a Tier 5 pricing. That's the best pricing they give any company. Most companies work for years to get enough volume to get to that Tier 5 pricing. We start everybody day one with tier 5 pricing, no matter what your volume is. Still get discounts if we do big projects and deliver to the location, some other vendor benefits there. And then on top of that, once a month, Site One will actually host a technical seminar for us. So our owners and managers join that so they learn more about French drains or learn more about alternate irrigation, drip systems, can learn more about anything in regards to the green industry that we are supporting.
So with Site One being our biggest national vendor, I think that it's probably an amazing partnership as far as, to your point, if a franchisee opens in Florida, someone is a vendor down there that knows the area, that knows the grass, that knows the things, the growing season. So that way our franchisees can feel the most supported as possible at all times, while also being supported by the brand team.
For sure.
Now, you talk about the brand team. Talk about a little bit about what makes your brand team strong and how you guys on the home front support the franchisees.
Yeah, that's an interesting story too. So again, a little bit about my background. I understand the business side, and I fully understand the green industry side. But I'm not just the only person. I have plenty of years of support in there. But I have a lady that works with me that's actually got more years than I have in the industry. So her years, my years, and then our director of training and support, he's also a veteran of the industry. So as a group of only 3, we probably have as many years of experience cumulatively as most of our other brands with many people.
Well, that's good. I know that, that's always a big thing, because most people that get into the franchise space don't have any knowledge of the green industry. Do you feel like that is the same in lawn care, or is that, I know that's a trait of franchising in general, but do you feel as if people tend to not have any industry in the landscape or the green industry before they get to Heroes?
Yeah, I actually prefer no experience, just because they'll do it the way we do it, right? As you may expect, if you're a DIY person, you understand this. There's a lot of different ways to do what we do. We feel like we've got a systematic way, a systematic approach for maintaining longer relationships with homes and homeowners. We get better efficiency, which means better profit. Several things that come from our ability to do exactly what you're talking about.
Yep. As you look and look at the brand and forecast, what are some things that you're the most excited about the brand?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is all businesses right now are being affected by AI, right? The whole AI trend, I call it right now, is in our industry already. A recent visit to the industry show in October of last year showed me robotic controlled mowing, no people involved, right? Now you add AI to that, and it all of a sudden it's not just mowing, it's making decisions, and good decisions, and not taking the tulips out or staying away from things that we know are going to be obstacles. Internally, we've adopted AI already in regards to a tool that we use for our salespeople. So all of our salespeople have access to a tool that will listen to their presentation and give them immediate feedback to tell them what they did well in that presentation and maybe a couple things they need to work on. And I think the biggest benefit for the owners specifically is they can get into those conversations without being along, without a ride along. I think the salespeople that are using it, their feedback has been simply that it also takes a complete set of notes for them. So they get a summary after that conversation so that they're not missing anything that they go in to propose. So AI definitely is going to affect this business in the future. Unlike some businesses, it's not necessarily going to replace people, except maybe the lawnmowing guy. But the ability to do things quicker, more accurately is going to be an efficiency thing. And that's what it's all about. The more we do and the more efficient we do it, the more profitable it is.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's funny you say that. The other day, I was driving from my house, and I drove by this lawn. I've noticed this lawn many occasions. It's a very nice looking lawn. But when I drove by, there was a little Roomba-esque lawnmower cutting the grass, just driving around. And I'm not going to lie and say I didn't sit there for 10 minutes and just stare at it and think to myself, like, I can't get our vacuum to do what I want to do, let alone the lawnmower, right? Yeah. So I think that, technology it's been a great thing for, it's shifted the way we do things. It's made us probably a little bit more hyper-focused on the way we do things and how we do things as well. So that's interesting. I think that in the sales tool, what's the most exciting about that is, to your point, the ability to coach on the run. I think that from the sounds of it, it isn't a aha tool like I caught you doing this, that, or the other. It's a teaching tool.
Yeah, immediately.
And from my background in coaching, I think that especially in home service sales, the thing that we don't do enough of is debrief.
Yes.
We don't take time after this sales appointment, before that sales appointment, to make a correction, research something that maybe we tripped over, or just give ourselves a pat on the back for something that we did well. I think that that's probably the one thing in sales when you're on a go, go, go mode that you don't have the opportunity to do this. And it sounds as if this tool is a way to just continue to sharpen your pencil in terms of, how do I get better? How do I become better? What are the questions I need to be asking? What are the questions that I'm answering incorrectly or not as strongly as I could be in order to complete that sale?
Yeah. Anybody that's been in sales knows that a ride along with your sales director is slightly uncomfortable, but ultimately doesn't happen every day, much less every single appointment, right? So think about that. If you're my salesperson and you got a tool that literally tells you before you go to the next appointment, something you could improve on, think of how your income can be affected by that.
Yeah, that's incredible. So in your time in franchising, both as a franchisee, a franchisor, et cetera, two-part question. First part, what do you feel, what are the type of clientele or what are the type of people that you find tend to lean toward the green industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. People that are looking for help in managing property, you'd think are maybe older in their years, higher in their income, et cetera, et cetera. But as you look at the generations, we're finding the younger generation doesn't want to spend their time doing that. So they're willing to pay for that. That's a budget item that I never had. The older folks definitely have the money and they're interested in having somebody take care of it, especially if they're to the stage of traveling. They want to make it look right. They sometimes have to. They're in an HOA. It has to look right. There's quite a change going on right now. In the past, and even back when I first started into lawn and landscape, we were focused on this, mid to upper income, it had to be a certain neighborhood, on and on and on. Today, we say, hey, look, it could be a millennial in there that doesn't want to do their own lawn, or Gen Z that has never had to do lawn work and always saw their father doing it. They just think that's something you have to do. Instead of a shrinking customer base, I actually see a growing customer base. Take the boomers and their kids alone, that's 50% of the market out there.
Yeah, I know I've had some conversations with people in passing where, to your point, even if they've had a small career, successful career in an office space, some of those people are just dying to get outside.
Yeah.
Right? They're dying to get outside. They miss that. They miss being outside. They miss doing things, right? And so I think that you're spot on in that in terms of, while it might feel as if it's shrinking, it's probably growing.
Yeah.
And I know, speaking of that, another advantage, I know that Heroes currently is using a flat rate royalty to start. In your opinion, as a brand president, what has that flat rate royalty allowed people when starting this business to save money, or however they plan it? What's the emphasis behind that?
Yeah, it's helping them scale faster, right? So that going into year one, obviously you start at zero. But by the end of year two, you're probably paying as a percentage of sales significantly less in your royalty than what your structure would be after that. The whole idea of it is quicker startup. Get me to $1 million faster. That's what we're trying to do for our Zs, is give them the best opportunity to get to that break-even point as fast as possible. Because once you're there, then reinvestment in the business starts happening, additional territories start selling. There's a whole bunch of reasons for it. But flat rate royalty is very unique, and to have that in a startup mode and then switch you into a regular royalty system like most franchises is very unique.
So that being said, you mentioned earlier about the different ways to generate revenue that Heroes has. When you guys, I know that people can obviously pick and choose. It's their business. They're an independently owned and operated business. But as you guys have built this out thus far, what are some, are you leaning heavily on that triangle to start? Or what is a way, if I'm a franchisee and I'm looking at lawn care and I know that the Heroes lawn care system has the ability to grow into 6 revenue streams, how do you scale me back, roll me back in and say, okay, Dave, here's how I would tell you to attack this on full, whether it be this, this, and this, and then here's how you grow into that.
Yeah. So the whole planning of this is relative to what we're talking about right there, is that when we go to a market, we know that the $700 per year nutrition service in fertilization is an easier sell than the $20,000 patio, right? So what we do for our Zs is we coach them so that prior to opening, they're actually establishing that initial 25 to 50 recurring revenue customers. At the end of 2 years, we expect that we'll have almost 50% of our revenue coming from recurring revenue, and it continues to grow from there. The other advantage to that, as we talked about just a little bit ago, is that at the end of 2 years, you may have 300 customers. What a great list to advertise bed control or tree care or, any other landscape service that we can actually do for them. We've got one company that puts in sod. And some of it's not new property. It's lawns that just haven't been treated right. And the best solution is tear it down, put sod back in, and take care of it.
I think that goes to your point that you made earlier. By starting off with the triangle per se, what it does in kind of the heartbeat of your business is it gets your feet on their lawn more often. And by doing that, you have the ability to increase the revenue by adding to the landscape or adding to the patio, whatever that might be, where the person that's not on the lawn is not going to be able to do that.
Exactly. If you already know me and I'm doing your lawn care, who would be the first person you'd ask to help with hardscape? Or who would be the first person you ask for weed control in my beds or trimming my trees or picking up the yard waste at the end of the year? You're not going to go out and look for somebody else. You got a guy.
Yeah, and so let's touch on the last part I want to touch on is the fact that you had mentioned that right now in most of our franchisee space, we do not do lawn cutting. So what or how do you counteract that? Is that something that you teach as a team to subcontract, or what is the play for that? If so, they find a contractor or they find a big business, commercial business where they want to be able to do that, provide that service. How do you guys coach to that?
Yeah, so it starts with this is that cutting lawns, you compete with 10-year-olds.
Right.
So you got that whole string of independent, quote unquote, business owners that are out there not understanding profitability, not understanding bottom line, not understanding reinvestment. So to try to stay price competitive with that doesn't make a ton of sense, right? We need more. We need more of that. Now, we target certain markets. We understand certain markets better. But in the end, we need to make sure that we're doing the things that make you money first. And lawn cutting can make you money, but not with the overheads that we have. We have technicians. We have managers. We have well-paid people, technicians that work for us that we want to keep. The equipment we use is very expensive, right? You'll see our brand everywhere, and we got brand new trucks and vans, and we've got the stuff we need to do it right for you. If I do get into cutting, I always want to supplement that with some other service, preferably one of our profitable recurring service lines. Then we just do it at the same time. The efficiency comes from less time on the lawn, doing two things.
When it comes to the technicians and the fertilization and those type of things, talk quickly about how licensing works for that in different areas.
Yeah, so licensing in our industry is super important. There isn't a single state right now that doesn't require a license for you to apply pesticides to a property. And that can be, environmentally safe pesticides, which we do a lot of, or it can be the typical nutrition. Nitrogen is one of the best sources of nutrition for our grasses. The licensing has more to do to protect the customer than us. Although we still are required to use PPE and, take the safe approach. You'll laugh about this, but sometimes when I'm in Austin and I see one of our guys out there with long pants and a long shirt on, I'm thinking to myself, how do you do this? But the reality is you have to. You got to protect yourself, protect your skin, just in case you're using a product that is sensitive to us, right? It's not as big as a challenge as you think, again, with the vendor support we have. So we can help coach and help you get through the testing. That's usually not a problem. We can align you with the right sources and resources you need to be able to get the education you need. And then internally, we've got some awesome resources too, outside of our vendors. One of our franchise owners is a PhD in turf care. He gets several calls from his franchise friends, right? Another one of our managers is a longtime manager for a weed control company down in the southern markets, right? So internal knowledge is better than sometimes our external knowledge because we know what tools we have, how we do things. That's just a great resource for it. Plus, again, when you look at my team and the years that we've been involved in the property care, there's not too many mistakes we haven't had to solve ourselves.
Yeah. Funny you say that. I remember I ran into an old farmer one time when I was coaching football in Texas, and it was about 107. And he came up to me, and I was coaching his son, and he said, "Coach, you don't have a long sleeve shirt?" And I said, "Yeah. Why?" And he goes, "Why would you ever wear a short sleeve shirt?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "It's the sun that hurts." And so the next day, our whole staff came out in long sleeve. It was probably the best day we ever had. So sometimes those old farmers, they know a lot more about than we know. So
They do.
Well, Brad, I appreciate your time tremendously. I think you've given an incredible insight on Heroes Lawn Care. We're excited about the future of Heroes Lawn Care. We think I know that there are a ton of available markets for Heroes Lawn Care, and so we're excited about that. I appreciate your time, and thanks for being a part of the podcast.
Glad to help, Dave.